Hi, bonjour.
Hello, hello.
This is Cecile from La Petite Creme.
I'm Fanny.
And we are here today in episode number 14 of Mom's Talk with a French accent.
Yep.
And today's topic is about
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day that's coming up. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, hello. So we're going to be joined. Hello.
Hi, Haley.
Hi, Haley. Hi, Salome. And while we are waiting for... Hi, Varisa.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good.
A new angle. I have a new, the light thing.
Oh, you're glowing. You look fantastic. We're loving it.
You guys were the first. You had it all worked out, so I'm working it to the ring. Yeah,
Well, it works. It's efficient.
Thank you. Yes, happy Mother's Day.
Yes, happy early Mother's Day, because it's we are about a few days ahead of the game for the celebration. But I think every day deserves to be a celebration of mothers, right?
Absolutely.
So we were just saying that we're on episode number 14. We are celebrating Mother's Day today. We're gonna, for anybody who has seen any of the previous episode, we take a topic that seems pretty obvious and we end up talking about it in a very different way. So don't expect any real celebration per se or any gift ideas. That's not what we do here. We just take a topic and shake it, and disperse it to the universe and try to see if it branch out to different things out there. So, so I'm Cecile.
I'm Fanny.
We are the co-founders of La Petite Creme. We do French diapering lotion and organic diaper care for babies, inspired by our French origin and French roots. And we have Varisa Perlman here. Varisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
I am Dr. Varisa Perlman. I'm a pediatrician of 25 years. And I have moved into a different space where I'm doing holistic health coaching. And these two beautiful ladies and their children were my patients. So I've joined La Petite Creme to just kind of not get put into a box, right? To just kind of talk a little bit about stuff that doesn't seem to fit so neatly into a box, because life does not do that at all. I think that along with your ooh la la shirts, I think you should also have like embrace the chaos.
Exactly.
Well, I did in French, so it sounds even more mysterious. But I think that's a good way to describe motherhood in that way.
And that's what we're here, and that's what gathered all together is the mothering. So we love to talk about motherhood. We are all three of us are mothers of two kids. Of different age, and we love to take, as I was saying earlier, very common topics and give our own flavor to it. So today's Mother's Day, and as we were preparing for this talk, we were mentioning that in France, first Mother's Day in France and in the US are not on the same day. So different countries, celebrate it at different time. And for us in France, we grew up celebrating Mother's Day by celebrating our own mother.
Yeah,
and
that's it.
And that's it.
Yeah.
So we would, that would be the day where the kids would do, a necklace or a song or whatever for their mom. And then you would, call your mom or do something with your mother. But it's only when we moved here to the US that we realized that it was everyone who is a mother is celebrated that day.
Yeah, that's a subtle thing. I don't think when you were describing it, I was like, yeah, I guess I never thought about how that was probably a very subtle difference. And I mean, I know that, like, at least for me, my mother-in-law is wonderful with the cards. She's a big card person. I'm sure Hallmark doesn't mind that we celebrate everybody as a Mother's Day. But I actually sent a card to a very good friend of mine who is obviously not my mother. But is a very good friend. I've sent it to cards to people who may not biologically have children of their own, but have always had kind of maternal space to me. And so I think that the United States, really does seem to be able to broaden that idea, right?
And it's
you know, for commercialism, but it's a nice idea.
It's nice to look at it this way, because as we were exchanging when we prepared this, we thought that yes, Mother's Day should be a celebration of motherhood. Like, you know, you have this firefighter day, or you have all those other heroes in life get their day of the year. It's fantastic that moms who are the master of superheroes have a day where they are recognized, right, for the work that they do and for the impact they have on society overall, right?
Yes. And I think it's interesting. So we were, again, just to replay, we were kind of going through different topics. If you don't mind, I'll kind of throw the topic out and describe a little bit of what I was thinking as well. You know, one of the things that I brought out was this idea of having a discussion about generational motherhood. And so it's kind of a topic that people have very, very different feelings about it. And it's okay in one person to have kind of conflicted feelings, right? Because there are some things in a very blunt way that, you know, we really enjoy that our mothers did for us. And there are things that we were like, you know, I may not repeat that, right? And we should be allowed to. But what I don't think that we always understand is how much different generations interpret what motherhood means and how that can impact whether it make it easier or harder, or just more kind of like textured as to how we consider ourselves as mothers. And so for some reason, and as you've brought it in, you know, there's a lot of ways that we may act as mothers to like the people who are at work for us or in our own companies. We always talk about La Petite Creme as being one of your babies, right? So it's like that kind of thing where like, how do we sift through all the different ways that we define motherhood, and really tailor out what it means to us. And in that sense, when we do tailor it out, I think we serve our children and the people that they really need us as their mothers the best. Does that make sense? Because
it does.
There's weirdness to it sometimes.
I'm curious to see what people who are listening are thinking here. So we have Suzanne, Leanne, hi everybody, Caroline. Why don't you write maybe in the comments what you think when you think Mother's Day, if it's beyond the traditional, you know, getting a gift for from your kids, or the traditional, what we had back in France was the noodle necklace. You do that in the US, the noodle necklace? So beyond that, you know, what would be the thing that you want to be recognized for or acknowledged on that day of mothers, right? Like, what is it? So write that in the comment.
And it's going to change as you move through your life cycles, right? In the beginning, you know, you may, and we've talked about all the life cycles of our children, kind of like walking through that space as well, and how you serve as a mother to even your children in your generation completely constantly changes. So really that identity is not a static one. It's very much a fluid space, you know? And the only reason why I think this is something that I talk about, because we always like to kind of like, we occasionally like to poke at the bear a little bit, right? Just to kind of poke at, right, certain things that people don't want to talk about, right? But, you know, I think one of the things that's very difficult when you're a mother is that whether it be conscious or not, there's a lot of judgment that sometimes is placed on you, right? And a lot of times that judgment does come from other generations where they're saying, well, you know, as a mother, you should be doing this, right? As a mother, you should not be doing this, you know? And again, I think trying to help, you know, trying to kind of give some guidance, maybe give some sense of, you know, direction or a path, but it can actually be very distracting and misleading for parents, for mothers particularly, and women who are trying to craft their own image of like, how do I want to be as a mother? And again, it's not always a bad thing. There are some great things that can be carried over, but I think that we all have to be given permission to say, you know, but not everything. There are some things that just may not fit to how I want to be right now.
Especially because when you only know everything your mother taught you in terms of how to become your own mother when you become a mother. And I mean, I became a mom when I was 30 years old. So
Yeah.
all my learning was when I was younger with my mom, you know, and all of a sudden I'm like put in that role, and my master at showing me that gave me the skill for a long time, but I didn't realize it was a skill set I was actually learning until I needed it years later. So it's also difficult to, because I feel that a lot when we remember the tip of the iceberg, like we remember the last few years of before becoming parents, or like even for our kids, they remember what happened last week. They have a hard time remembering, you know, what they were doing when they were 2 months old.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, the more I feel like I grow as a mother, the more I realize that my mom was teaching me stuff without me realizing it. And it's only when my mother come out when I talk that I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yes. Yes. There's definitely some wiring there. You know, there's definitely some wiring that is there. And I think that, listen, we all are raised by humans. Like, we're not raised by computers. We're not raised by people from the future, right? And so, you know, all of us as mothers, people always say, you know, hey, give that kid a break. You know, it's their first time through life. And we always say, give that mom a break. This is the first time, you know, she's doing it too. So like, we all, you know, make good decisions, and sometimes we make bad decisions. Sometimes there's great wiring. Sometimes there's really bad wiring. And one of the things, you know, I'd say that I try to sneak it in every single talk, you know, is that adage that, you know, the children are born the way they are to heal the family. And sometimes we have to make peace with the idea that, like, yes, there are moments where, like, I do something that I know is literally like scripted from something that I heard my mom say or do. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's there. That's great. Like, you know, there is some wiring there, right? But there's sometimes I have that response, and I'm like, I always promised myself I would not do this to my kids, you know, and you're like, and you just realize that that is the texture. That's okay. That is okay to say, hey, I like this part. I don't like this part, you know?
It could also be a way to rewrite the past. Like, it happens sometimes that having that same like instinct of just repeating what we've seen when we were younger and saying it out loud and have that moment of like, oh, wait a minute, can either come out as, well, now I understand where she was coming from, and yes, I was very against it, but now that I'm in her shoes, I'm about to give her credit for that, even though I didn't like it when I was on the parent side, on the kid side.
Yes.
Or also, you can reprogram that with your own kid and feel like, okay, this is how I'm transitioning to not doing that anymore.
Yes.
And it kind of like piece the past, right? I feel.
Yes. I think you make a really good point. I think that one of the gifts that you can give to your children on Mother's Day is to be gracious with yourself, to be okay that you're going to say, hey, you know, this part I'm going to mess up a little bit. I know I'm going to mess up. And I'm going to do the best I can because I'm kind of rewiring some stuff that's already in there. But just be patient with me and just know that, like, I am trying to kind of, you know, unearth it. There is a certain amount of peace that has to come as you grow older with, like, the good and the bad. And, you know, knowing that, like, I think you're absolutely right. There are moments that, like, something happens and I react a certain way and my response was like, oh, this must have been really hard for her. Like, you know, I can see where, like, why she drifted into feeling that way. And I'm like, okay, I know it's hard because here I am trying to swim against the current, right? And kind of not do that again. But boy, is it tempting to, like, float right into, like, exactly what she used to do, that I was like, oh, why do you do that? You know?
And she probably did it because she was following the same, like, fighting the same battle.
That's it.
And at the time, it's just, as you said, it's very convenient, right? So
yes.
we keep going back and forth, and it takes, what's hard as a mother is it takes so many years for the kids to be able to verbalize that until they are parents themselves, right?
Yes.
I remember, I had my kid when I was 30, and I called my mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and I always knew growing up that she was dedicating her life, you know, like, to us, and I was very grateful of that, but not in a very external kind of way. I knew I had it, you know, comfortable. And then, but I always thought, you know, when I'm going to be a mom, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom because that's the best for my kids. And I was convinced of that.
Right.
And then I had children. I was like, No way, not for me. Like, it's not happening. So I called my mom. I was 31 years old. I called my mom and I'm, Mom, thank you for your hard work. Thank you for everything you've done, because I never really realized what it meant. Like, I knew it was comfortable for us.
Yeah.
I didn't know the cost of that.
Yeah.
But it took me like, so she was very happy to hear it, but it took her 31 years, and I'm the last one of the kids, so there were multiple
Yes.
kids before me, to hear it. I'm like, she had to be so patient to deal with me being like cranky and, you know, obnoxious and, you know, vindictive when 31 years. I was like,
Yeah.
damn it. Like,
You know, listen, there's no expiration date on a thank you, right? And there's no expiration date. I mean, you know, it's like, it'll take it. We'll take it. But I love the fact that you were willing to appreciate your mom, but not necessarily replicate her. Do you see that?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing where sometimes, you know, we feel like in order to really honor our parents, we have to be exactly like them. And actually, that's not true, because life changes and times change, and what people need and what makes sense, it shifts. But you can definitely appreciate something and say that, like, I appreciate it, but I'm not going to necessarily make that choice myself because it doesn't fit what's going on, but doesn't mean that I appreciate it any less. And sometimes we feel like we have to kind of choose that. I find myself too, that where it's that kind of like the teenager defiant comes into like saying, like, you know, I don't want to be like that, and I don't like how you did that. Okay, you don't have to always say the second, you know, you can say like, I appreciate the choices you made. They were difficult choices. That was a choice that, you know, that worked for you, and I appreciate that how difficult that was. I am making a different one, and that's it. We're not comparing. We're not trying to compete. You know, we always, it's always a strange thing of like this competition. There's no, you know, competition. Like, we all try our best with who we are, who our partners are, who our children are, right? They have different needs. What the world needs in terms of like, what do we, you know, need to succeed in this society, and for what modeling we want to give for our children to succeed in the society. And that, again, the generational piece, you know, it's interesting because Mother's Day for me, as someone who has very little family in this country, right? It's, you know, I only knew my grandmother for like maybe the first quarter of my life. Like, I didn't really have grandparents around all the time, you know? And my children have, thank God, like both sets of grandparents, which is crazy to me, you know, which is amazing, you know? And, you know, my mother-in-law with the cards, and I mean, we've got the cards going, you know, we like, you know, I remember I went up to Target, I bought like $75 worth of cards, and the person looked at me like, do you have a store? Like, what? No one buys these cards. And I'm just like, just leave me alone. I've got a lot of people. We're going to send it. And thank God. But then over the years, we've lost people, right? And so, you know, for me, Mother's Day, the reason why I brought out the generational thing, to me, is a day to like check in. Who's around? Like, who can we celebrate with? Because there will come a day, God forbid, where the cards are not there. Like, we don't have as many people to send cards to, you know? And that, to me, is adulting. Like, we're like, you kind of put aside whatever like kind of feelings you have about, you should have done this, you should have done this, you know, to like, I appreciate that you are in our lives, and that's it. That's all. I think that's all that we can do for each other, is just to appreciate each other as much as we can for these 24 hours.
I love that you're saying that, because then it goes away from the, yes, there's the card and the commercials and the candy and all that stuff, but if the cards are a way to extend your hand and be like, hey, we're in this together, right?
Yes.
From one mom to another. Let's continue fighting, and you know, we're on there, and we're gonna get through that storm, whatever stage we are in, and but it kind of built the village too, right? Of saying like, I know what you're going through, you know what I'm going through, we are connected, and motherhood is not a single person job, as we talked in the previous talk. It's really a village, a community, a sense of like, we are better mother when we are multiple people together, and maybe Mother's Day can be an extent of that, and be like, okay, we're mothers, let's connect to all the motherhood love and power and knowledge that is around us, because otherwise we get isolated, right? There is not one way of, we're only the combination of everybody's mothers, right?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that's a great point, because I do think that like no one person should be expected to do everything right, right? None of us are, you know, and so I do depend like on my friends or other mothers in my kids' lives to kind of like round out the edges, maybe where I kind of messed up here and there, where I could use, you know, a little bit more understanding and patience. I need my village to do that for me. And I think this generation of women and this generation of people, we're not perfect. We are still trying so hard. You know, I mean, we'll never do everything perfect, but I think that we are willing to admit, especially in the context of women going into the workforce and women, you know, trying to kind of like really, I hate the word balance, so I'm not going to use it, but to navigate, you know, the intersection between like working outside of the home, working inside the home, and like, you know, your relationships. And I think that we're kind of coming out of that space where like we can do it all to like being like, could you hold my hand? Like I could use a hug.
And that's, I
think,
think, I mean,
right?
we talk a lot about like equality and rights, and, you know, trying to be as women seen more for what we are. But I think the point that you're bringing of like being okay to ask for help, is probably the biggest right that we should exercise, because it feels like, especially in the motherhood role, where it's like you're a mother because biologically you were designed to be a mother, so it's like, yeah, it's only, you know, it's you. But now being able to say, yeah, I have some of the basic, you know, biology for it, but it's a giant mountain, and I have two feet, right? So, somebody has to build the rest with me, because it's not just my own responsibility and job and the only thing I can do, especially with the world that our kids are facing nowadays, right? It's becoming so complex and so different than what we grew up with in the past generation, that we need to all be together in there, because otherwise it's not going to happen.
You know, it's interesting because while I believe there's a lot of resources that are out there, there can actually be also like a saturation of advice where there's like, I mean, you know, we find it as adults, but, you know, there's like kids where kind of everyone's kind of giving you like 10 ways to do things at least. And, you know, I think that one of the things that I have grown to appreciate, and we talk about this all the time when we've had other talks in terms of, you know, how to spend time with your children or other people who are around you, it just becomes more of a struggle to like be present and to just listen. You know, I have this thing, I was walking around with my oldest and we were doing errands, and like it's kind of the funnest thing about being able to live together in New York City at the same time. And I was like, you know, I have this thought, and it was with one of my clients that had this teenager, and, you know, they were kind of going back and forth with her mom, and she's going back and forth, and she just turned, and she was so, sometimes I love the clarity that comes from being that age, you know. And she was like, listen, Mom, I'm just trying to explain this to you. I am not complaining to you. And we've talked about this before, right? Like, what role do we have in our children? What impact do we have for our children? And I think in the end of the day, if they can see a person who is present and is in touch with what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, right? And where they can ask for help and where they can take care of things, right? And be able to see someone who is willing to be fluid and shift with the chaos of the world, that's the best you can do, right? That's the best you can do as a parent, because the world really needs a little bit of that, kind of the ability to kind of move with the challenges that come at them. You know, I played tennis. You can't be flat-footed, right? You got to be like a little up on the balls, your toes, you know, just ready. And when you have a situation where we define things so clearly, where has to be this way or that way, and they just don't get that kind of, I don't know, it's not laxity. There's a word that we use.
Adaptability.
What is
Adaptability?
it? Yes, it's really along that way of the adaptability, you know? Again, that it's kind of a weird Mother's Day message. because, you know, we're trying to talk about something that, again, is like usually in a nice box, right? Like, colors in this
It's
box.
going to be a long call to
Yeah.
write.
But it's not, it's a lot more like, you know, that's what we can give, you know, is just that appreciation. And that's why I say, like, you know, I'm not harping on the things that, you know, we might be upset with our moms. I'm just highlighting that it's okay to feel them, and it's okay to also like just be at peace with them and be like, you know what, you did the best you could, you know, like we're doing the best we could. We just keep going. I love you. You're present in my life. You're here. Thank God. And that's it.
But,
you know, it's not that complicated.
And also expressing that there are multiple touch points that can play that role of extended mothers. Yeah. I feel like it removes some of the pressure from like being the good mother when you feel, and also it tells your kid that you grab your information from a network of stuff, which is also true in life, right? You don't take a single source of information, you take multiple sources, you gravitate towards different friends, and then you make your own opinion, you make your own personality, you make your own sense of style by just picking and grabbing and analyzing everything around you. So if we put that into perspective, which I feel like it's pushed a lot in our kids nowadays, which is nice because they can build themselves from like pieces that they find everywhere. So motherhood should be the same, where you're like, yeah, I'm your mom, you know, on paper, but I'm one voice. And maybe there's stuff that we can say as mother that other people might not be able to say. So we need to exercise that privilege to be able to, you know, convey some messages. But at the same time, we would encourage them to be like, listen to the other voices. And if other voices tell you something that seems legitimate and you want to share it back, then feed me as well. And then maybe I can grow and become a different voices for another set of, you know, kids or other people around it. So we can all mother one another in terms of not the logistic, but like mentally help nurture everyone, because the goal is that as a society, we keep going and grow and feel safe and nurture and all the things that we want for our kids, right?
Yeah, I think that is, I think that description actually is a good way to kind of visualize the difference between kind of the French view of Mother's Day, right, to kind of the American view, which, you know, I don't know, maybe I think is it because we live in a country of mostly immigrants, you know, and I feel like, you know, my mother, you know, once she left Thailand, I think she saw her own mother maybe like 5 more times before she died. You know, I mean, you don't have the luxury, right, to kind of have all those people around you. You know, you kind of make up, you know, at least for me growing up as an immigrant, all of my, you know, anyone who was a female that entered my home was an auntie. You know, they became, you know. And so I think that because of that in the United States, we've kind of forced ourselves to say, you know what, let's just honor everybody. Let's just grab everybody and just kind of say, you know, we're gonna value, you know, what you do, and at least take a moment. You know, these holidays are pretty commercialized and they're pretty cheesy and stuff like that, and it's annoying because it's hard to get a reservation at like different brunch places. I get that. It's annoying that way, you know. And, you know, if it means that you just kind of even, you know, sometimes this is a tough holiday if you've lost a mother recently. This is a really hard day because I think that we, you know, just time goes by and then you look up one day and things happen, you know, and you can't really, it kind of brings you, but then, you know, maybe spend that day with, you know, other women in your life, you know, or, you know, spend that day just like sitting in the park, like really, you know, appreciating someone who was in your life that way, because, you know, we just don't do it. Like we just put ourselves in autopilot, clean up messes, you know, like have errands to do, drive around in the car, you know, we just do it. And then we just kind of look up and all of a sudden, you know, 5 years, 10 years have gone by, you know. And so it's tricky. And I do think it's not necessarily always gender based, obviously, you know. I mean, if you really think about it, I think if I had to describe, maybe, I guess, a difference, maybe we should just do parent days, but the difference between, like a mother and a father. I think that we have certain stereotypes that sit out there, and I've seen relationships where sometimes the roles are reversed. I see kind of, we always talk about mother being more nurturing or like a father being more strict. We kind of have those like kind of archetypes of all of that. But, I've seen, mothers who are way stricter, and I've seen fathers who are definitely, the nurturing / maybe a little bit of pushover, like a little bit more. And, I think that I think the idea is that who can care for you? Like who cares? That is really who Mother's Day is for. It's who cares for you in that way. And it may not even be your own mother, but it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's, I think what we can encourage everybody watching is to think about who have those roles in your life and who you feel like is part of your overall mother, right? And then take a moment to appreciate with them and share with them if they're still around, then the line of communication is still there. But like, to me, it feels a lot more deeper than sitting in a restaurant and be in my worst possible mother moment where I have to yell at everybody, being like, be quiet, be nice, smile, be nice to your mother.
So what are you guys doing for Mother's Day? Let's do that. What would you do?
You start.
I don't know yet, but usually we go to a farm as a family, and that's it.
Yeah, that's
and
nice.
I get some like drawings and cards and hugs and things, but we don't do something like too much, too big. We just spend the time as a family.
Yeah.
And for me,
I did not like schedule anything. Like my husband is in charge of it.
Right,
so I can let go and enjoy the day without, to have the mental load of organizing my home celebration.
I think that's a good idea.
And then for me, it's more like I don't plan anything, and I see what plans itself that day. So I had years where nothing happened, but I'm fine with that too. It's just I don't expect for that day to find out that my kids love me, and I feel I feel happy about that, because I'd rather have a little bit of love and appreciation throughout the year than everything onto one day, because it's marked on the calendar.
Right.
But I have more of an acknowledgement that day of what they do for me, or what the testimonial that I get, right? And I really enjoyed when my neighbor, who is more like my mom's age, brings me flower every year. And that's when I was like, oh, it's actually nice that she recognized that we are teammates, right? Like, you're a mom, I'm a mom. Hey, I'm going to get you flowers. And for some reason, that has a special taste as well. After the conversation we just had, it makes perfect sense, because it does make me feel like I'm recognized for all I do in and outside the house. Right?
Yes, it is.
It feels nice. The kids thing is cute, but my kids now are older, so it looks a little more forced. Of like, oh, I have to write you something. So I did it last night. Three things. Last year, I think one of my kids printed something out of the internet. Oh, thank you. Feeling very special today.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that so in France, like, is that like a big day that everyone goes out? Like, is it like here, or what is it?
No. So in France, it's very personal, intimate. So it's at home. Like the kid at school will have some kind of activity where they would do something throughout the week before. Yeah. And then on the morning, they would give it to their mom, and pretty much it. Like, some of them might go to a restaurant, but
maybe now it's more.
Right. But I never did that with my parents. So
yeah. It's that kind of thing where you always have to like tread that thing of that you want it to have like that everyone sees it and does it like kind of like as something, but you don't want to get it so that it becomes like kind of doesn't have a meaning to it, right? Like you kind of, and I do think that it is nice sometimes to just like let someone else plan for the day, and just like whether even if they do nothing but just not have to even be like managing that space.
And you don't want it to be pressure either, because
No,
like,
right.
I don't know, I feel like if I had something planned on a Sunday, because I do that every Sunday, then it would annoy me that now I have to turn around my schedule for Mother's Day, when you can celebrate me whenever you want. I'm here.
Right.
It's like here every day. You can celebrate me at 7 o'clock when it's time to cook. Like, how about now?
Here. But you know what? That might be something. It's interesting because, as we're talking and we're just kind of chatting, like how to make, I do think that if you can, it's interesting because as you get older, and I would often say this in my mind, and I would say that, like, I am like taking care of a lot of people, right, in my space, right, whether it be as a doctor or as my own family, or even other people around. But who's going to take care of me, right? Like, who's going to take care of me? And I think that it was interesting because I didn't realize how like difficult of a question that was for me, right? Because there comes a moment, honestly, that your own mother, my mom's in her 80s, right, she's just like, I just want to, she says, ask me how I am, but she's also like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired today. Like, she's her own health, she's still trying to kind of like make sense of growing older, so she just doesn't really have all the energy she'll to kind of care for me, right?
Sure.
In that way. And I think that that's why it motivated me to send a card out to my friend, right, who I feel like would always find a time to kind of send me something randomly, to let remind me that there was somebody that was thinking of me. So I think that we kind of, again, we don't need to kind of commercialize, like, we don't be so literal about it, like, have a moment to think about people that you care around you and people who do care for you in your village. Forget your kids' village, right?
Yeah.
Your village, right? In many ways, I think that is something that Mother's Day can feel different, because you're right, because when you have your kids, like, you're like forcing them to like write the card. I saw, when I saw Izzy, I came with like 10 cards, and I was like, okay, I've got 3 pens, please write in all the cards, and they're like, we're like in the middle of the restaurant, like grabbing all the cards, and I'm like, this is not really getting the point. But they were really great about it, because I wanted other people to get their cards, and I wrote cards in them. But it's a kind of thing where it's just the idea of just, who's your village, like, who is your space that cares for you? And if you look up and you're like, I don't have a lot of people who care for me, right? Then find them, choose friends who do, right? Kind of get rid of
Be selective. You deserve to be selective. You can be picky. For that, you have to be picky.
Like, I think that Mother's Day, could be like a slash like care day. Like, like, who cares for who? Let's just honor people who care for each other, right? And I think in many ways, in some ways, people may say it dilutes the message, but to me, I feel like, as I've watched life go by so quickly and the cards get less and less, right, it really becomes like kind of a matter of like surviving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to remember that there are people who do care for you, and reach out to them and thank them, and like also like care for them too. And like, let's do that, because we do lose the people around us.
Yeah.
Because life is like that, so I get kind of, it's been stunning, I don't mean to keep on going back to the cards, but it's like stunning. Like, I would go, I mean, it was a market. My family is not like, I wasn't raised with cards, but in many ways, it's just like a concrete way to communicate to people in this time of like texting,
it's intentional. So the fact that you spend time to go to the store and bought the card and wrote the card, that now has a lot more meaning than it used to, because as you said, it's so much easier to copy paste a text or get like an animated images where it's like, happy Mother's Day, and you get like 500 of those from people you don't even know, and you're like, thank you. Like, but so a little more, as you said, the card makes it that you went for this person and you wrote the address and you and you wrote something in there, so that has more power.
So if I made like a dry noodle necklace for you, Cecile, would you wear that next year for Mother's Day?
Sure. Oh, I would gladly wear it.
You know how they talk about Hallmark? You know, there's like a dry noodle business somewhere. They're like, I have a fantastic idea. Like, I think that we should make this so like every holiday, it's the dry noodle necklace. That's the way to go.
I think it's going to be in trend. Mark our words. What you heard it here first. Okay, next year when everybody's wearing the dry noodle necklace,
Right?
come from us.
Maybe when you guys, get, like where you're like, oh, what else should we do besides La Petite Creme? I think we should like go into the dry noodle business.
I think that's where it is.
Try to make those necklaces popular here. But yeah, I mean, it's no. Do you guys have? I mean, do you have the fortune of having generations of women around you, or in France do you have more, or what? Because you guys are expats.
Yes.
You guys.
So we have each other, which we feel like that the closest that we have to family who is not blood here, and you have
Me, I have friend from very, very long time. One is pregnant, the other one has 2 kids. And we, even if I moved in the US, we never broke that link.
Yeah.
And I know that I can count on them anytime, and the same for them. So it's very precious. Yeah. And also I have my sister, which I'm very close. And even with the distance, we managed to keep that link. Because as you said, I think we all made the effort to recognize that this link is important, and we work, not every day, but we work like somehow in the year to reinforce that link and acknowledge that it is important. And the day that we are together, it's the same as we never like be separate. So.
Yes.
And my mom, of course, and my grandma.
And your grandma.
I still have one grandma, which is 93.
Ooh,
so
that's amazing.
That's a kind of different generation.
Yes.
But she's still there, and she's still important in my heart. So pretty happy to have her around, and I will definitely celebrate her on Mother's Day, even if it's my grandmother.
Yes. Right? Which is wonderful. Yeah. And Cecile, you have family, a lot of family?
Not here in the US. I have my mom and my sister in France, and then I just lost my second grandmother last year. Yeah. But before that, I had my two grandmothers. So my kids got to meet their great grandmother for about 10 years. So it was I feel very fortunate of that, for them to see multiple generation of mothers and the mother of their grandmother. So I think it's also show them that mom is not only mom who is mom to a kid, but okay, mom has a mom. I see that, and then mom's mom has a mom. So it's kind of give them the tree of like the history. Which was, I mean, we felt very fortunate of that, because they can see how each one, interact with the next, and they could see their grandmother becoming a child to their great grandmother, because we keep that, right? We always stay kids, and we can be whoever we are, but as soon as we step in with our parents, we become somebody completely different. So the kids could experience that with every generation. Yeah. And it was touching to see, because they always nurture that relationship through everyone cherishing it all the way up. So.
Yeah, I think the thing that's also really nice about having generations around you too. My grandfather ended up moving in with us for a little while. My grandmother unfortunately died in a car accident while they were visiting, so she passed away in that way. And so, but to watch my own parents care for him, and to realize that like the caring doesn't go in one direction, right? It goes in multiple generations. And I mean, the whole sandwich idea, right? Where you're like taking care of your younger generation, you're also taking care of your older generation. And, I didn't think that much about it, right? I really, until like maybe like this year, and I think that it was that kind of thing where like, again, like you said, like, you're like, what is this? Like, where did this come from, right? And then it clicks, and then you're like, oh my God, this is what they were talking about. This is what they were talking about. That you had to take care of like one side and the other side, and I think
it's good, because that means you're going to be taken care of on both sides too, right? Yeah. So if I love the sandwich analogy, that if you're extending, on 2 generations, then somebody is going to extend to you from 2 different directions. Yes. And that gives you the support, right? Of like, you have something to stand on, because it's not only your own 2 feet, you have all those additional pieces of support around you, and
Yes.
it helps her go through the day, the hard one, the good ones, and keep moving, because again, by yourself, you're going to do it. It's too much for.
And it's that kind of thing where like you model, right? So like as they're watching you take care of, right, the older generation, I know there's a selfish part of me that I'm like, and that's how you should take care of me. When I'm annoyed to you and I'm older, I want you to mother me too, because I'm gonna need it, right? But like if they see you kind of just angry all the time, you know, and just like it's not the energy that you would want for yourself, right? And so it's an incredible challenge, right? To realize that like, you know, you have a responsibility to work out whatever you need to work out so that you can take care of both generations. I personally, as a pediatrician, love watching the younger generation talk to the grandparents and that exchange, because I feel like there is there can be such a sharing in terms of patience. You know, and sometimes, you know, again, you know, we always think about more of the negative, but like sometimes I see my kids and they're just like, yeah, that's just how it is. Like they're just so good with their grandparents, and the grandparents like, oh, they're fine. You know, and so they like get along with each other, like in a way that like I can't with either of them. You know, like and they both modeled to me like, okay, how I should be. Like, you know, they kind of like, oh, okay.
But at the same time, you can take credit for that because you're the middleman, right? So they would not be able to have that relationship because we all morph into other people around us. We take pieces of people around us. So that beautiful relationship that you witness between those 2 generations, you're the middle person. Right. So you have to have a role into that,
right?
One way or another.
You can be that fulcrum that either makes it work and makes everyone understand, or you can kind of make it not work, right? And so there is a certain responsibility as we walk into understanding our place as we grow older and our different roles that we have in our lives, you know, that we are trying to like work things out and yet at the same time come to peace, right? There has to be a balance, right? We can't walk around angry all the time. We really need to like have days or times where we're just like, you know what? We are just explaining each other to each other, but we are not complaining to each other. No one needs to get fixed. You know, nobody needs to be changed or a different person. We can just kind of coexist together. And I think that is not easy, but at least for Mother's Day, it should be the way that it works.
So that's what we can wish for everybody who's watching as we are heading toward the end of this talk is enjoy your Mother's Day. Reach out to the mothers in a wide term in your life, the mothers, the source of inspiration, the people who help you in that role, and be present, as we say all the time. Be present and see what life is throwing at you that day. It could be coming from a different direction than what you anticipated.
Yes.
Right? It could be the dry noodle necklace, or it could be something else.
Yes.
Let's see what your dry noodle necklace is this year. But
I hope my kids make me a dry noodle necklace.
Yeah. Just a hug. A hug would be already a wonderful gift. You know, and we wish everybody a wonderful Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, Varisa.
Mother's Day. Enjoy.
Everyone who watched.
All these mothers through your product as well.
Yeah, so we'll, and we have a special for Mother's Day where you can have this wonderful t-shirt that Fanny is wearing, the Ooh La La t-shirt. So if you want to make your Mother's Day a little more French, we can be with you. So that would be, you know, our way to hugging you to get that t-shirt. So
very nice.
And we'll see you
weeks, right?
Yeah, wonderful talking to you. Bye everyone. See you soon for the next episode of Mom Talk with a French accent. And until then, have a wonderful time.
Bye.
Bye.